It was just another evening, the kind where you sink into the couch and expect nothing out of the ordinary. That was, until my wife, Anna, walked into the room with a look I couldn't quite read. She motioned for me to sit next to her, her expression serious and deliberate. Curious but slightly wary, I sat down. Without wasting time on small talk, she came right out with it. "We need to talk," she said firmly, her tone leaving no room for hesitation. Her words immediately threw me off. We'd been married for years, and serious talks weren't something we did often. Our life was steady, predictable, and I liked it that way. But Anna wasn't one for subtlety tonight. She wasted no time getting to the point. "Our life," she started, "it's too routine. Too predictable. I feel like we're stuck." That wasn't exactly what I wanted to hear. To me, predictability was a good thing. It meant stability, comfort, and control, everything I worked so hard to maintain for us. "I don't see the problem with routine," I said, trying to keep my voice even. But she wasn't interested in debating the merits of our steady life. Anna was resolute. She told me she'd been thinking about this for a while, and she believed we needed something bigger, something exciting, to shake things up. Then she dropped her big idea: we should buy a house. Not just any house, either. She wanted a larger home, with more space and potential. A place with a garden and room for family gatherings. Something far beyond the cozy apartment we'd been living in for years. At first, I didn't know what to say. How exactly are we supposed to afford that? I asked, my practical side taking over. Selling our current place wouldn't even come close to covering the cost of a bigger home. I expected her to falter at that point, but instead, she doubled down. Anna told me she'd been saving up in what she called her Dream Fund, a savings jar she'd been quietly building for years. That was news to me, and I couldn't help but feel surprised that she'd managed to set money aside without me noticing. Then she brought up something even more unexpected. She had been talking to her best friend, Sarah, who suggested a possible solution. Sarah's husband, Ryan, worked for a company that was hiring engineers like me. Not only that, but there was also a remote position available that Anna could take on herself to contribute financially. She laid it all out with enthusiasm, painting a picture of new opportunities, increased income, and the dream home she was determined to achieve. I listened, trying to absorb it all. But it was hard to reconcile this version of Anna with the woman I thought I knew. She'd always seemed content with the life we had, our apartment, the quiet routines. I even reminded her of how much effort I had put into making our current place perfect. From the hours I spent painting to installing custom shelves she wanted, I had worked tirelessly to make it our home. What had changed? Her response felt dismissive, almost flippant. She said she'd recently completed an online motivational course, which had inspired her to think bigger and dream beyond the life we'd built. She wanted more: a yard, a barbecue, a future that looked like the idyllic picture of happiness she'd started envisioning. I couldn't argue with her determination, but I wasn't entirely on board. "Anna," I said, keeping my voice calm, "dreams are great, but this is a huge leap. A course and encouragement from Sarah don't guarantee anything." She didn't budge. She was convinced this was the change we needed, and she wanted me to meet Ryan and Sarah to discuss the opportunities further. In the end, I agreed, more out of curiosity than conviction. "Fine," I said. "We'll meet them and hear them out." For now, that seemed to satisfy her. The next morning, true to her word, Anna was already bustling around, getting ready for our coffee shop meeting with Sarah and Ryan. She took her time, as she always did, making sure every strand of hair was in place and her outfit was just right. I didn't mind her wanting to look her best, but waiting by the door while she fussed over her appearance made the minutes drag on. By the time we finally got into the car, I was feeling a bit restless. The coffee shop wasn't far, and traffic was manageable. Still, I couldn't shake a sense of unease. Something about this whole idea didn't sit right with me, but I kept my concerns to myself. When we arrived, the place had the kind of cozy, lively atmosphere Anna loved. We found a table by the window, ordered our drinks, and waited for Sarah and Ryan to arrive. It wasn't long before they walked in, a seemingly friendly couple with easy smiles. After the usual pleasantries, Ryan wasted no time getting down to business. He explained that he had already talked to the hiring manager at his company and had mentioned me as a potential candidate. He described the position in detail. It involved fieldwork, maintaining and repairing specialized transmitters in remote areas. It wasn't your typical 9-to-5 desk job. The schedule was a 3 days on, 3 days off rotation, with occasional longer assignments. The pay, Ryan assured me, was significantly better than what I was making at my current job. While I couldn't ignore the financial appeal, the idea of a rotating schedule and being away from home for extended periods didn't exactly thrill me. I asked some pointed questions about the work, what kind of equipment I'd be handling, how much travel was involved, and what kind of support the company offered. Ryan answered confidently, explaining that training would be provided and the job was demanding but manageable. When it came to Anna, her potential role seemed far less involved. It was a remote position managing data in Google Sheets and processing applications. The pay wasn't much, but she was excited nonetheless. She framed it as her first real step toward contributing financially to our household. I admired her determination, even if the job felt more symbolic than substantive in the grand scheme of her plan. Toward the end of the conversation, Ryan brought up an upcoming corporate event, a casual gathering where I could meet the team and get a feel for the workplace culture. He warned me that the team was a quirky bunch, mostly young professionals and recent grads with eccentric personalities. They're good people, he said with a laugh, but don't be surprised if a few of them are unconventional. I made a mental note to keep an open mind, but wasn't particularly looking forward to mingling with strangers. Anna, on the other hand, saw it as an adventure. She was already excited about the idea of meeting new people and stepping into this new chapter of our lives. By the time we wrapped up the conversation and left the coffee shop, Anna was practically glowing with optimism. I, however, couldn't help but feel a bit reserved. It wasn't that I didn't want her to be happy, I just wasn't convinced this plan was as perfect as she made it out to be. Still, I agreed to attend the corporate event and take the next steps toward considering the job. For now, that was enough. When the day of the event arrived, Anna and I made our way to the venue. It was a lively affair, with music playing softly in the background and clusters of employees chatting and laughing. As soon as we walked in, we were greeted warmly. Drinks were offered, introductions were made, and for a moment, I felt like maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. But then, things took an odd turn. A young man, clearly intoxicated, stumbled up to us and blurted out a wildly inappropriate comment about when Anna and I would be having sex. I froze for a moment, caught between shock and anger. Before I could say or do anything, another employee swooped in and pulled the drunk guy away, apologizing profusely. The man who intervened was calm and professional, assuring me that the drunk guy had simply had too much to drink and didn't mean any harm. I told him it was fine, though I couldn't deny the irritation simmering beneath the surface. The man who had stepped in introduced himself as someone who worked in the same role I'd be stepping into. He explained that we'd be alternating shifts, covering each other's 3-day cycles. Talking to him gave me a clearer idea of what the job would be like, and I appreciated his insight. Meanwhile, Anna was in her element, chatting effortlessly with everyone around her. She had always been more outgoing than me, and tonight was no exception. I noticed a group of younger guys at a nearby table watching us, or more accurately, watching her. Their drunken stares were hard to miss. I leaned over to my new acquaintance and asked about them. He chuckled and told me they were recent college grads working in another department. "They're harmless," he said. "Just a bit immature." His relaxed attitude eased my tension somewhat, but I still kept an eye on them. As the evening went on, Anna seemed to charm everyone she met, while I found myself loosening up a bit. The event turned out to be more informal than I'd expected, which made it easier to enjoy. Even the group of young men didn't cause any trouble beyond their occasional loud laughter and clumsy attempts to mingle. Toward the end of the night, a few more colleagues joined our table, including one who offered some valuable tips about managing the fieldwork I'd soon be taking on. I found the advice helpful and started to feel slightly more at ease about the job. Anna, on the other hand, seemed to focus more on socializing than work-related conversations, but I could tell she was enjoying herself. As the event wound down, we made our rounds saying goodbye. Most people were genuinely friendly, and some even seemed excited about us joining the team. On the drive home, Anna was buzzing with ideas about the people she'd met and what this new chapter might bring. I stayed quiet, reflecting on the night and mentally preparing for what lay ahead. After the corporate event, Anna and I sat down to talk about everything we'd experienced that night. She was full of energy, still buzzing about how promising everything seemed. "Didn't it feel like a new beginning?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. I couldn't share her optimism, not entirely. The job offer was attractive financially, but the idea of a rotating schedule with 3 days on and 3 days off felt like a disruption to the life I valued. I don't know, Anna, I admitted. The money's great, but the job itself sounds like it could be a grind. She brushed off my concerns with a smile. It's not just about the job. It's about what it can lead to. The house. The future we've been dreaming about. I stayed silent, unsure of how to voice the unease I still felt. What really stuck with me wasn't just the work schedule or the quirks of the team, but that group of young guys from the event. I couldn't shake the memory of their lingering stares and drunken antics. Some of those people seemed off, I said finally. Like the guy who made that inappropriate comment. Are we just supposed to ignore behavior like that? Anna laughed it off, dismissing my concerns. They were just young and drunk. You've made mistakes when you were young too, haven't you? I didn't answer, but her casual attitude toward the whole thing bothered me. Still, I didn't want to dampen her spirits, so I let it go. Over the next 2 weeks, I focused on wrapping up my responsibilities at my current job. It wasn't a place I was deeply attached to, but leaving still felt like a significant step. By the time I handed in my resignation, I was officially set to start the new role. Anna couldn't have been happier. She even threw herself into preparing for her own remote job, spending hours learning the ins and outs of managing spreadsheets and data. She was determined, and I respected that. Watching her dive into this new chapter gave me a sense of relief. Maybe this whole thing wouldn't turn out as bad as I feared. The day I started my new job came quickly. The fieldwork was just as demanding as Ryan had described, but I was managing. The schedule took some getting used to, but I reminded myself of the bigger picture. The extra income, the savings, the eventual house Anna wanted so badly. For the most part, I buried myself in work, trying not to let my doubts creep in. Anna, meanwhile, seemed to be thriving. She took to her remote job with ease and often mentioned how much she enjoyed the independence it gave her. But then something happened that shifted everything. One evening, I came home after a particularly grueling 3-day shift to find Anna asleep at the dining table, her laptop open in front of her. She looked peaceful, content even. I gently shook her awake, asking how her day had gone. It was great, she said with a grin. I even got to catch up with some of the guys from the corporate event. Her casual tone threw me off. Who exactly? I asked. Oh, just some of the people we met that night. You know, the ones who sat at our table. She laughed lightly. We ran into them at a coffee shop when I was out with Sarah. They recognized me and joined us for a bit. That wasn't the answer I wanted to hear. And what about the guy who made that inappropriate comment? Was he there too? She shrugged, clearly unbothered. Yeah, but he barely said a word. He looked embarrassed about what happened at the event. Relax. Relax. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my frustration in check. And after the coffee shop? I asked carefully. Did anything else happen? Anna hesitated for a moment before adding, well, one of them gave me a ride home. They even dropped off my work laptop. The words hit me like a brick. They came to the house. I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Yes, she said, still so casual it almost felt dismissive. We had pizza, talked for a bit, and then they left. It wasn't a big deal. Wasn't a big deal? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Why didn't you tell me about this? I asked, barely keeping my anger in check. I didn't think it mattered, she said with a small shrug. I was with Sarah the whole time. There was nothing to worry about. Her indifference only fueled my irritation. It's not about whether you think it matters, Anna. You had strangers over to our house while I was away, and you didn't think to mention it. She sighed, clearly annoyed by my reaction. You're overreacting. If it bothers you that much, we can invite them over again so you can meet them properly. Maybe then you'll see they're not so bad. Her suggestion only made me angrier, but I swallowed my frustration. Fine, I said curtly. Invite them over. But I'm telling you right now, if something feels off, I'll call it out. Anna smirked as though amused by my skepticism. You're always so quick to judge, she said. Maybe this time you'll change your mind. I didn't answer. Instead, I resolved to keep my guard up. Something about the whole situation didn't sit right with me, and I intended to get to the bottom of it. A week later, Anna followed through on her promise to invite the group over to our house. They arrived on time, and at first glance, everything seemed fine. The guys were polite, even going so far as to apologize for any inappropriate behavior at the corporate event. I appreciated the gesture, though I wasn't about to let my guard down that easily. I kept a close eye on them, quietly observing how they interacted with Anna and with me. For a while, the evening felt uneventful, almost pleasant. But as the night wore on, something started to feel off. One of the guys couldn't seem to keep his eyes off Anna. At first, I thought I might be imagining it, but as the evening progressed, his lingering glances became impossible to ignore. I tried to gauge Anna's reaction, but if she noticed, she didn't show it. She was engrossed in conversation, laughing and chatting as if nothing was out of the ordinary. I let it slide for the time being, but my unease only grew when another guy joined in, standing far too close to her and laughing at every word she said. He didn't seem interested in mingling with anyone else. His attention was entirely focused on Anna. At that point, I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I walked over and inserted myself into the conversation, standing close enough to make it clear I was paying attention. The guy looked startled but tried to play it off, mumbling something about Anna being a great conversationalist. I nodded, my expression unreadable, and stayed right there until he finally moved away. The rest of the evening passed without any further incidents, but the tension I felt didn't fade. Once the group left, I turned to Anna and let my frustration show. "I don't trust them," I said bluntly. "The way they act around you, it's not normal." She rolled her eyes, clearly irritated. "You're being ridiculous," she said. "They were just being friendly." "Friendly?" I shot back. "One of them couldn't stop staring at you, and another wouldn't leave your side. That's not friendly, that's disrespectful." Anna sighed, brushing me off as if I were overreacting. "You're blowing this way out of proportion," she said. "They didn't do anything wrong." I wasn't convinced, but I knew better than to push the issue further that night. "I'm serious, Anna," I said firmly. "I don't want you spending time with them anymore." She crossed her arms, her tone defiant. "You can't control who I spend time with. They're just friends. Nothing more." Despite her argument, I made my stance clear. If they're going to act like that, they're not welcome here. Period. She didn't say anything else, but the tension between us was palpable. Life moved on, but my suspicions lingered. Over the next few weeks, I began to notice changes in Anna's behavior. Whenever I was away for work, she would sometimes miss my calls or take longer than usual to reply to my messages. It happened often enough that it started to feel deliberate. When I confronted her about it, she shrugged it off, saying I was overthinking things. "I'm just busy," she said. "There's nothing to worry about." Her excuses didn't sit right with me, but I couldn't prove anything, at least, not yet. Then, a new assignment came up that required me to spend 5 days traveling between multiple sites. Before leaving, I made sure everything at home was in order and reminded Anna to call me if she needed anything. "Don't worry," she said with a reassuring smile. "Everything will be fine." But the same pattern repeated itself while I was away. Missed calls. Delayed replies. And when I finally managed to reach her, she had an explanation ready. "Someone brought me a puppy," she said casually. "I've been busy taking care of it and taking it for walks." Her words caught me off guard. "A puppy?" I asked. "Who gave you a puppy?" "A friend," she said, her tone light and dismissive. "It's not a big deal." I wanted to press her for more details, but something about her casual attitude stopped me. Instead, I ended the call, my frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. Something didn't feel right, and I couldn't ignore the gnawing suspicion that there was more to her story than she was letting on. By the time I returned home, I was determined to find answers. Anna greeted me warmly, acting as if everything was normal, but her behavior only made me more suspicious. I decided to take matters into my own hands. Our neighborhood had street cameras, and I realized I could use them to verify her so-called dog-walking routine. When I reviewed the footage, what I saw left me in stunned silence. There was Anna, walking toward a nearby trash bin, not with a dog, but with a handful of used condoms. My stomach churned as I watched her dispose of them, her movements casual as though it were just another chore. The sight confirmed my worst fears. The sheer number of condoms alone was enough to tell me exactly what had been going on in my absence. Fueled by a mix of anger and disbelief, I made a decision right then and there. I would confront her, and everyone else involved, head-on. Fueled by a storm of anger and betrayal, I couldn't sleep that night. My mind raced as I pieced everything together, the footage playing over and over in my head like a broken record. There was no denying what I had seen, and I wasn't about to let it slide. I worked tirelessly to finish my work assignment a day ahead of schedule, determined to get back home and confront the situation directly. The next evening, I arrived in my neighborhood, parking my car a few blocks away from the house. I wasn't sure what I'd find, but I wanted to approach cautiously. I walked quietly to the garage, slipping inside without making a sound. 4 hours, I waited in silence, my ears straining for any sign of activity. The tension was unbearable, but I forced myself to stay patient. Finally, well into the night, I heard the unmistakable sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I stayed hidden, giving it another 30 minutes to be sure. Then, faint but clear, I heard noises coming from inside the house. Intimate noises. The kind that erased any lingering doubt about what was happening. My heart pounded in my chest as I steadied myself, my anger sharpening into a laser focus. I went back to my car, retrieved the pistol I kept in the glove compartment, and walked straight to the house. My mind wasn't racing anymore, it was singularly focused on what I was about to do. When I opened the door, the scene inside was worse than I had imagined. There was Anna, completely unclothed, surrounded by several men, all in various states of undress. The room froze the moment they realized I was standing there, weapon in hand. The chaos of the moment hung heavy in the air, every second feeling like an eternity. Without a word, I pulled out my phone and began taking pictures. The flash of the camera sent the men scrambling, tripping over themselves as they tried to grab their clothes and flee. I fired a single shot into the floor, the deafening sound cutting through their panic like a knife. "Nobody moves," I said coldly, my voice steady despite the rage boiling inside me. They froze, trembling, their hands half-raised in submission. One of them, a younger man, stumbled and fell flat on the floor, his wide eyes locking with mine. That's when I recognized him, one of my co-workers from the corporate event. The same guy who had drunkenly made that disgusting comment about Anna. "You," I said, my voice low and sharp. "Start talking. What the hell is going on here, and how long has it been happening?" He stammered, his words tripping over each other as he tried to answer. But I wasn't in the mood for delays. "Talk now," I barked, raising the gun slightly, "or you're not leaving this house." Under the weight of my threat, he cracked. He admitted everything, how they'd been coming over regularly during my business trips, how Anna had told them she was divorced, using my absences as an opportunity to keep up her facade. Each word felt like a punch to the gut, but I stayed silent, letting him spill every sordid detail. When he finally stopped talking, I turned to Anna. She was frozen in place, a mix of fear and guilt plastered across her face. I didn't say anything to her, not yet. Instead, I turned back to the man and gestured toward the door with the barrel of my gun. "Get out," I said coldly. He scrambled to his feet and bolted, leaving his shoes behind in his haste. The other men followed, tripping over one another as they fled. Once they were gone, the silence in the house was deafening. I turned to Anna, my gaze piercing through her as she stood there, clutching a sheet around herself like it could shield her from the consequences of her actions. "So," I said, my voice ice cold, "you told them we were divorced. Good. Consider it true now." She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand to silence her. "Save it. I don't want to hear your excuses. You wanted this life. Fine. Get ready for the one you've earned." Without waiting for a reply, I turned and walked out of the house. My car was parked just down the street, and I drove straight to my best friend's place. He was someone I trusted deeply, someone who would know what to do next. When I arrived, he greeted me with the calm professionalism I'd always admired. He wasn't just my best friend, he was also a skilled lawyer, someone who had seen his fair share of messy divorces. I laid everything out for him, from the infidelity to the damning evidence I had gathered. He listened intently, his expression unreadable until I was done. "You've got everything you need to ensure a favorable outcome," he said finally. "The photos, the eyewitness account, It all supports your case. Now, let's talk about making sure she walks away with nothing." His bluntness was refreshing. I wasn't in the mood for sugarcoating. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Do you remember that savings jar Anna's been building? The one she's been adding to for years?" I nodded, recalling how proud she'd always been of it, though she rarely mentioned it outright. "If that money hasn't been declared anywhere, no bank records, no paper trail, you can take it," he said. "She can't prove it existed in the first place." The idea was ruthless, but I couldn't deny the logic. Anna's betrayal had left me emotionally shattered. Taking that money felt like a way to reclaim a piece of what she had stolen from me. Reluctantly, I agreed to my friend's plan. It wasn't an easy decision. Part of me wrestled with the morality of taking Anna's savings, but the betrayal I'd uncovered left little room for sympathy. If she had been so cavalier about discarding our life together, I saw no reason to play fair anymore. "You'll need to go back home and act like nothing's wrong," my friend advised. "If she gets suspicious, this could get messy. Play along for a while, and we'll handle the rest from here." The thought of pretending everything was fine made my stomach churn, but I knew he was right. To secure everything I needed, I had to put on the performance of a lifetime. That evening, I drove back to the house, bracing myself for what I was about to face. As soon as I walked through the door, Anna rushed toward me, tears streaming down her face. She dropped to her knees, clutching my hands as she begged for forgiveness. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I made a mistake. A horrible mistake. Please, give me another chance." Her desperation was palpable, but it didn't move me. If anything, it only deepened my resolve. I kept my expression neutral, my tone measured. "We'll see," I said curtly. "There's a lot to think about." The relief on her face was almost immediate, as if my calm response had given her a sliver of hope. She stood up, wiping her face and trying to compose herself. I couldn't stand to look at her, but I knew I had to keep up the charade. Over dinner, she made every effort to win me over, talking about how she wanted to rebuild our relationship, to prove that she could be better. I nodded where appropriate, offering short, non-committal responses. The less I said, the more she filled the silence, desperate to convince me that she could fix what she had broken. Later that night, as we lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. She fell asleep quickly, exhausted by the weight of her guilt, or perhaps by the sheer effort of keeping up her facade. I, on the other hand, was wide awake, my mind racing with plans. I needed to find that savings jar and figure out how to remove it without her noticing. The next morning, I watched her closely as she went about her routine. She seemed determined to act like the perfect wife, cooking breakfast and asking about my plans for the day. I played along, giving vague answers while mentally mapping out the house. Where would she have hidden the jar? It wasn't something she'd leave in plain sight. For the next couple of days, I bided my time, waiting for the perfect opportunity. When she finally left for her usual grocery run, I knew it was now or never. The house was quiet, and I had enough time to conduct a thorough search without interruption. I started in the bedroom, checking her drawers and under the bed. Nothing. Moving to the living room, I searched every cabinet, every hidden corner, but still came up empty-handed. Frustrated but determined, I continued into the storage room. That's when I found it. Tucked away in the back, hidden among old shoeboxes and forgotten knickknacks, were several large jars. Each one was filled to the brim with neatly stacked $100 bills. The sight was both shocking and oddly satisfying. I unscrewed the lid of one jar to confirm its contents, and the crisp bills inside left no doubt. There were at least 5 jars, all equally packed. Memories flooded back as I stood there, recalling how Anna's parents had always encouraged her to save. They had given her money over the years, urging her to use it wisely. Clearly, she had listened. For a moment, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. Her betrayal might have cost me emotionally, but at least this would ensure she didn't come out ahead. I quickly got to work, carefully placing each jar back into its box and wrapping them in old cloth to disguise them. The last thing I needed was for her to notice anything missing too soon. Once the jars were secure, I carried them out to the car, taking care not to draw attention. Before leaving, I sent her a quick message. My dad called. He needs me to bring over a drill. I'll be back in a bit. It was a believable excuse, one that wouldn't raise suspicion. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than usual, though I wasn't in a rush. When I arrived, they greeted me warmly, their expressions turning serious as I began explaining the situation. I told them everything: her infidelity, the jars of money, and the advice my lawyer friend had given me. They listened in stunned silence, their disbelief eventually giving way to anger and support. "We'll take care of it," my dad said firmly. "No one will find this here." My mom nodded, her face set with determination. I trusted them completely, knowing they would do whatever it took to keep the money hidden. Leaving the jars with them gave me a sense of relief, though it didn't erase the heaviness in my chest. On the drive back home, I rehearsed what I would say if Anna asked where I had been. Fortunately, she rarely pressed for details, so I doubted she would question my story. When I walked through the door, she was already back from the store, unpacking groceries. "How'd it go?" she asked, her tone casual. "Fine," I replied. "My dad's all set now." She seemed satisfied with the answer and went back to her task. I watched her silently, a strange mix of anger and determination swirling inside me. The jars were hidden, and the next phase of my plan was set in motion. The days that followed were some of the most difficult I'd ever endured. Living under the same roof as Anna, pretending everything was normal, felt like a betrayal of myself. Every smile she gave me, every attempt she made to win me over, only deepened the resentment I felt. But I reminded myself this was temporary. The documents were being prepared, and soon I'd have everything I needed to end this nightmare on my terms. At night, as Anna slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, running through my plan over and over again. I thought about the jars of money, now safely tucked away at my parents' house, and how they would play a crucial role in what came next. This wasn't just about getting back at Anna. It was about ensuring she couldn't disrupt my life any further once I walked away for good. Every detail had to be perfect. There was no room for mistakes. Anna, meanwhile, seemed oblivious. If she suspected anything, she didn't show it. In fact, her demeanor had shifted entirely. She was almost cheerful, as if she believed she'd earned my forgiveness. Watching her act so carefree only strengthened my resolve. This wasn't a marriage anymore, it was a charade. And I was determined to see it through to the end. Then, a few days before our wedding anniversary, I got a call from my best friend, the lawyer. "The documents are ready," he said, his voice calm and steady. "You can serve her whenever you're ready." I thanked him and hung up, my mind immediately shifting to the perfect way to deliver the papers. The timing couldn't have been better. With our anniversary just around the corner, I decided to turn the occasion into one final statement. This wasn't just about ending the marriage, it was about making it clear that I was taking back control. The next day, I got to work preparing the delivery. I found a massive cardboard box and placed the divorce papers at the very bottom. Then, I surrounded them with layers of smaller boxes, each meticulously taped and nested inside the next. By the time I was done, the package was enormous, almost comical in size. It was exactly what I wanted, a mix of absurdity and finality, designed to make her spend time unraveling her fate. When our anniversary arrived, I kept my demeanor calm and collected. Anna greeted me that morning with a bright smile, clearly hoping to use the occasion as a way to mend what was left of our broken relationship. I played along, acting as though I was on board with her efforts to start fresh. "I have a surprise for you," I said casually, watching as her eyes lit up with excitement. "Oh," she asked, her tone filled with anticipation. "What is it?" "You'll see," I replied, motioning for her to wait in the living room while I went to retrieve the box. It was heavy, but adrenaline made it easier to carry. I brought it inside and placed it in front of her. Her laughter was nervous as she inspected the oversized package. "What is this?" she asked, looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "Your gift," I said simply. "Go ahead. Open it." She hesitated for a moment, likely trying to gauge my mood, but then began tearing into the layers. Each box she uncovered revealed yet another box, and her initial laughter quickly turned into mild irritation. "Is this some kind of joke?" she asked, looking up at me. I shrugged. "Keep going," I said, my tone neutral. It took her nearly 30 minutes to reach the final box. By then, her excitement had given way to frustration. When she opened the last box and pulled out the divorce papers, her expression froze. The color drained from her face as she stared at the documents, her hands trembling slightly. What is this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You told everyone we were divorced already," I said coldly. "Now it's official. Consider this my confirmation." Her reaction was explosive. She threw the papers onto the floor and began yelling, calling me every name under the sun. "This is a joke, right?" she screamed, her voice rising with each word. But when she saw the look on my face, she realized I wasn't joking. That's when she lunged at me, fists raised in anger. I caught her wrists mid-swing and pushed her back firmly but without violence. "Don't even try it," I warned, my tone as icy as my resolve. She broke down into tears, switching tactics from rage to pleading. "Please," she sobbed. "Don't do this. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." But her desperation didn't move me. I stood unmoved, watching as she cycled through emotions, trying to find a crack in my armor. When it became clear that I wasn't going to relent, she accused me of being heartless, of throwing away everything we'd built together. I laughed bitterly at that, shaking my head. "You threw it away the moment you brought strangers into our home," I said. "This is the life you chose. Now it's time to live with it." Without another word, I walked to the bedroom and began gathering her belongings. One by one, I tossed them into the hallway, not caring about the mess. She followed behind me, screaming and crying, but I didn't stop. By the time I was done, her things were piled outside the front door. I opened the door and gestured for her to leave. "Your new home is out there," I said coldly. "The same place you discarded everything we had. Consider it poetic justice." She stood there for a moment, stunned, before finally stepping outside. I closed the door behind her without another word, sealing the chapter on our life together. The first thing I did after throwing Anna out was change the locks on every door. I wasn't about to take any chances. She was unpredictable, and I wouldn't put it past her to try sneaking back in, either to retrieve something or to cause trouble. The locksmith came the very next morning, and within an hour, the house was secure. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small measure of relief. Whatever Anna planned next, it wouldn't involve walking back into my house uninvited. It didn't take long for her to return, though. Over the following days, she came by multiple times, rattling the handle of the front door and sometimes knocking loudly. I ignored her every attempt, standing just out of sight and waiting for her to leave. But Anna was never one to give up easily. A week later, she showed up with the police, claiming I had stolen her money and unlawfully locked her out of the house. It was exactly the kind of dramatic entrance I had been expecting. When the officers knocked, I opened the door calmly, greeting them with the demeanor of a man who had nothing to hide. Anna, on the other hand, was livid. She yelled and pointed at me, accusing me of theft and demanding that they force me to let her in. "He took everything," she screamed. "You have to search the house. He's hiding my money in there." One of the officers turned to me, clearly skeptical but obligated to investigate. "Sir, do you mind if we take a look around?" he asked politely. I nodded without hesitation. "Go right ahead," I said. "But before you do, let me explain the situation." I told them everything, about her infidelity, the photos I had taken, and her violent outburst when I confronted her. I handed them my phone, showing them the pictures as evidence. Their expressions hardened as they scrolled through the images. "I kicked her out because she tried to hit me after I confronted her about her affairs," I explained. "I've done nothing illegal." The officers agreed to check the house anyway, as Anna insisted there were jars of money hidden somewhere. I led them to the storage closet, opening it with a calm flourish. Inside were the same old shoeboxes I had placed there earlier, now filled with worn-out boots and sneakers. One officer picked up a box and opened it, finding nothing remotely suspicious. Anna was livid. "They were here," she screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. "He must have moved them." The officers exchanged a glance, clearly unimpressed. "Unless you have concrete evidence to support your claims," one officer said firmly, "there's nothing we can do here. You can't just accuse someone without proof." Anna tried to argue, bringing up her parents and how they had given her the money over the years. But the officers pointed out that there was no record of these funds and no evidence linking them to me. "Even if what you're saying is true," one officer added, "it doesn't change the fact that you've been removed from this property by the owner." Her frustration boiled over, and she began hurling insults at me, accusing the officers of taking my side unfairly. They remained professional, but it was clear their patience was wearing thin. "Listen," one officer said, cutting through her tirade. "We've seen the evidence, and from where we stand, you're the one in the wrong here. It's time for you to leave." She opened her mouth to argue again, but seemed to think better of it. With a final glare in my direction, she stormed out of the house. I stood by the door as the officers escorted her to the street. One of them turned back to me and offered a nod. "We'll file a report," he said. "If she comes back again, give us a call." I thanked them and watched as they drove off, leaving Anna standing alone on the sidewalk. She hesitated for a moment, as if considering her next move, but eventually walked away, muttering under her breath. The house was silent again, and I locked the door with a deep sense of finality. The divorce went as smoothly as my lawyer friend had promised. He had seen plenty of cases involving infidelity and financial disputes, so he navigated the process with ease. The evidence I had gathered, photos, witness accounts, and her erratic behavior, made my position unassailable. True to his word, my lawyer ensured the legal proceedings were swift and decisive. To show my gratitude, I discreetly used a portion of the hidden money to thank him for his work. It felt like poetic justice, turning her hoarded funds into something constructive. Once the divorce was finalized, I wasted no time selling the house. It had become a symbol of everything that had gone wrong, and I wanted nothing more than to leave it behind. Luckily, the market was favorable, and the property sold quickly. With the proceeds, I bought a private house in another part of the city, far from the memories of my old life. The new house was everything I needed: peaceful, spacious, and a fresh start in every sense of the word. With my living situation resolved, I turned my attention to my career. The new job, the one Anna had pushed me to take, no longer held any appeal. The demanding schedule and long hours weren't worth the effort, especially now that I had a financial cushion to fall back on. I resigned and returned to my previous workplace, where the workload was lighter and the atmosphere more relaxed. The familiarity of the old job was a welcome change, offering the stability I hadn't realized I'd been missing. At the suggestion of some friends, I decided to put the remaining money to work. I hired a financial analyst with a strong track record to guide me through the process of investing. Together, we built a diversified portfolio, focusing on stocks with steady growth potential and reliable dividends. It wasn't a get-rich-quick scheme, but that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted stability, the assurance that I could live comfortably without financial worry. Within months, I started seeing the benefits of a steady passive income stream. As I settled into my new life, I made it a point to cut off any connection Anna might try to exploit. I spoke to my parents first, explaining everything in detail so they would be prepared if she tried to contact them. They were supportive and promised not to engage with her under any circumstances. I also reached out to mutual friends, sharing just enough of the story to ensure they understood why I wanted no further contact with her. Everyone was understanding and cooperative, cutting ties with her at my request. Of course, Anna didn't take the hint. She made several attempts to reach out, starting with my parents. When that didn't work, she tried using mutual friends as intermediaries. Each time, she was met with silence or polite refusals. Frustrated, she began calling me directly, leaving long-winded voicemails filled with accusations, pleas, and demands. I ignored them all. To me, there was nothing left to say. Her efforts only highlighted how far removed I was from the person I'd been during our marriage. Over time, her calls became less frequent. She had burned every bridge, and I had no intention of rebuilding them. Every time her number appeared on my phone, I felt a mix of annoyance and pity. I had moved on, emotionally, financially, and practically. Whatever she hoped to achieve, she would have to do it without me. And with each failed attempt to pull me back into her chaos, I felt a little more at peace, knowing that chapter of my life was finally closed. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.